and we are officially rolling. Welcome to episode 32 of the Ministry of Freedom Show. I am Jim Moats, and before I introduce our guest, I want to say a sincere thank you to everyone for your role in growing the show's reach and impact. So the subscribers are going up. We're back to gaining viewership and subscribers and engagement online. So we feel like we're making a little bit of an impact. So that's pretty cool. I want to encourage everybody to subscribe on the YouTube channel, engage in the comments, and on Instagram. So I'm at Real Jim Moats, and the show is at Ministry of Freedom Show. And most importantly, the biggest thing you guys can do right now is share the show with someone in your contacts, someone at work or school who you think should be part of the tribe. Another thing is I got a book coming out. I try to mention it quite a bit. Tentative release date, mid-June. So when it comes out, please buy it. Better yet, do as I do with a few books, buy a handful of them and give some away, because I'm excited about this and it's been quite a process. Today, on the other side of the screen, we welcome Tamara Brunow. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jim.
So you're a friend of the show, been a supporter since the beginning, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. You always send me such interesting thoughts and questions and things on Instagram. I thought, man, if I know anybody's going to be a real value to the audience, it is you. So thank you for coming on and agreeing to do this and throw yourself out there. I hope it's going to be fun. So
Sure.
Again, welcome. And, we always like to start with scripture. So I reached out to you. I said, hey, do you have a scripture you want to include? And a lot of people do, some don't. But you were all over it. So you sent me a couple, which I love. So let's unpack these. So we'll do some Jesus stuff, and I'm gonna get your thoughts on that. And then we're going to jump into some business things and some social things and having the audience get to know you a little bit better. Get my cheaters here. Psalm 34, 18 and 19. Love this. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue each time. All right, so you know the question. Why is that relevant to you?
I've always I've remembered that scripture for years, but yesterday I was speaking with a very good friend of mine. She's been a mentor for, over 10 years. 12 years. And 4 years ago, she had a horrible accident. She slipped and fell on the ice, leaving her office. And this is a woman, just a powerhouse businesswoman. I mean, indestructible. Indestructible. And she has had 4 long years of fighting a traumatic brain injury now. Can't work. Numerous hospitals, so many treatments, rehabilitations, and we still stay in contact. We chat, and yesterday she and I were chatting back and forth, and she said, I don't know some days if I should just give up.
Wow.
And I sat there and I just cried, and I was like, gosh, Jeannie, no. And I thought of that scripture, and I thought, she is brokenhearted. She's brokenhearted. Her spirit right now is broken. Yeah. But she has a lot of faith. She's a woman with a lot of faith. So I sent that to her. She has another surgery today. And that was something that just really stuck with me when you asked. I thought that was important for today.
It's good timing, especially in our season, just the season in the country as a whole. I like it says brokenhearted, and then when your spirit's crushed, that's deep, that's dark. I've been there. We've probably all been there, but it's not just you're having a bad day. When your heart's broken and your spirit's crushed, it does seem dark. It does seem hopeless. The second part of that scripture I love. The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue each time. I think it's important to understand that the righteous person doesn't mean the one that's living perfect or has it all together. Our righteousness comes from our faith in Christ. So that righteousness, we're clothed in righteousness when we profess and believe Christ is our Lord and Savior. So if we believe, we're righteous. So it's by nothing we can do or have done and nothing we can earn. It's freely given. And that's the grace, the message of the gospel that is the greatest news to me, because I'm a freaking screw up. I'm not going to earn it.
Yeah.
And we don't need to earn it. And the righteous, it says we're going to face troubles. That's why I'm shocked when people are like, I'm a Christian. Why am I facing all these troubles? I mean, how many times does the Bible need to spell it out for us? It says, in this world, you'll have trouble. The righteous person faces troubles. We're going to have some stuff going on, and the Lord will come to our rescue. It's pretty good.
Yeah, very much so. I've asked you a couple of times, there's many times where my faith, I feel like in the last year has really been tested and wavered. And when it is definitely when you're tested the most, when you are just brokenhearted, when you feel just crushed inside, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Something, you grab onto something, and then when you get those little, like I liked how you said how Allie taught you like the word God wink,
Yeah.
those little, I told my husband that, but when you get that little light, you get that little shine there, and you're like, okay, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and our faith gets strengthened when it's tested. It's like anything else. I mean, you want your muscles to grow, you better strain them.
Yeah.
You put them under stress and duress, and they're going to get stronger. It's good. Got to build those faith muscles. I love this next one. So this morning you got with me and you said, "Hey, the parable of this is called, my translation says parable of the farmer scattering seed." And I thought, okay, that's a good one. Let me read that.
Yeah.
So the first part, 1 and 2, basically just says Jesus, where he's at, and then he's teaching in parables. And then it's Mark 4, by the way. So we pick up in verse 3. This is Jesus speaking. He says, "Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seed. As he scattered it across his field, some of that seed fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate it. Other seed fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The seed sprouted quickly because the soil was shallow, but the plant soon wilted under the hot sun, and since it didn't have deep roots, it died. Other seed fell among thorns that grew up and choked out the tender plants, so they produced no grain. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil. They sprouted, grew, and produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as has been planted." Then he said, "Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand." So I love the parables because you gotta put some thought into it. But this one wasn't too complicated. I remember when I first started reading the Bible and I read this, I was like, I kind of get this. Okay. So I think I've been all of these. I've been in each of these seed seasons, so to speak. But the one that I think I've been most of the time is the seed sprouted quickly. So I'm really fired up. But then the plant wilts under the hot sun and things get a little bit difficult and it's easy to fall away and you die out. And since your roots aren't deep, your faith kind of dies off. And that's what that means to me. And what we want to be is we want to be fertile soil. How do
Yeah.
we become fertile soil? That becomes the question then, doesn't it?
It becomes, that's the parable of the sower in my translation.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that is, the shake the rocks out of the soil. How
Yeah.
do you, like you said, how do you create that fertile
Yeah.
base, that fertile soil, to sow your roots in? And it's, I have this little devotional, and in there it tells the story, also, this woman, and she had so much hurt in her heart and just so much pain in her life through experiences. There were so many rocks in her soil that she couldn't let the roots go deep.
Yeah.
And I really loved that. It said, sometimes the Lord has to shake out the rocks. You
Yeah,
have to get the
and do
rocks out.
that tilling. So I imagine the little gardening kind of fork
Yeah.
thing, that little rake.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to go on in our heart and in our minds and in our lives sometimes. And that's not the fun part. But boy, once the roots of faith can grow deep, it's like the roots are so important, and there's a lot of analogies of it in scripture. There's one, I think it's in Proverbs maybe, where it speaks of the tree that's still standing after the storm. So like you see in Florida, you see hurricane footage and stuff, and these 200-mile-an-hour winds go through, and everything's just devastated. And then here's this palm tree that's just standing, and you're like, okay, what is that about? Well, it's the roots, right? It's been through a lot of storms, and its roots go deep, and that's because the storms are coming, right? And literally and figuratively for the area that we're in, right? We went through it again this morning.
Yeah.
And I was sharing with you before we hit record, I'm in a new construction house, and all of a sudden I've got water seeping through part of my foundation. I'm like, with what neighborhoods that are a mile away from me have been through in this last month, I'm counting my blessings and thanking God that it's just a trickle of water. But the storms in life come, don't they?
Absolutely. They absolutely do. And the times of my life when I've noticed that I've been uprooted the most is probably in things in my life where I hadn't really dug deep roots. Maybe there was a reason I didn't, or maybe that was my encouragement to dig deeper.
Yeah. Those are two really good scriptures that you pointed us to. I'm going to go back and meditate on that stuff later too, because that's really good. Thank you for sharing those. Let's transition to, you want to tell the audience how you and I know each other, how you kind of came upon the show and knew that I was doing this and in this new season of my life and stuff. Let's start there, and then I want you to jump in, if you would, to go back as far as you want. Elementary school, high school, whatever you want. And I want to know how we got to today. And then we're going to unpack your business, because that's going to be some meat.
Sure. So I am a avid YouTube. I listen to podcasts and I read books. I'm not I don't particularly care for social media a ton.
Same.
It's not my jam. I don't typically get much from it, but I was drawn to YouTube years ago because I would listen to podcasts when I was working out. And I drive a lot for work, right?
Yeah.
So I saw that Mike Collins, all of a sudden I saw his face pop up there with some guy, and I was like, and I know Mike from the construction industry, of course, my industry. And I thought, what is this? And I clicked on it, and Ministry of Freedom. So that was my introduction to the two. And it was so, I was like, okay, this guy's starting with scripture, but he has Mike Collins on here, who is like known as the funniest, most unorthodox guy that I know.
Yeah, there's a dichotomy.
But also just a good heart. So I stuck around and I listened and I was intrigued and I laughed and I thought, this is interesting. This is interesting. And at that point, that was about it, but it was enough to make me keep listening to the next episode.
Yes.
And I just really appreciated and liked your message, Jim. Probably more so because I see what's happening in the world with young men and young women.
Yeah.
And it's disturbing to me. And I have a hard time finding people that truly understand and are willing to acknowledge the real issues that are going on today. So your show, similar to Jordan Peterson or even, Lex Friedman, some of the guys that I follow, people that I follow, I liked what you had to say, and I wanted to support it. I wanted to make sure that other people, so I share them and I point people in that direction. And I hope you guys continue doing what you're doing.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. That's in a nutshell why this is getting done. It's, if not us, who? You know what I mean? Let's entertain a little bit, but also have the message of personal excellence and building a life of faith and trying to throw something out there once a week that's going to help people have the life that they desire to have. And I appreciate you getting it. Some people don't get it.
Personal excellence has been something that's almost become shameful to talk about.
It is.
I've been chewed up more in my life in the last 10 years for striving for more than I was when I wasn't doing things maybe the right way in my life.
Yeah.
It's unusual to me, and it's something that I've noticed that's especially happened in about the last 8 to 10 years. There's been a
Yeah.
shift, and
I
I don't
agree.
like it.
Success seems like it's demonized. Um, Wanting to be your best, which is independent of trying to put other people down. I don't understand how that ever came to be. Um, Once we start rising, raise the watermark, in our spheres of influence, in our families, in our communities and country, then everybody can come along. But all of a sudden, wanting to be fit, wanting to build wealth, and wanting to be living to your potential has become, like I said, demonized and at times racist, which I still can't wrap my head around. I can't get how, if you're a white person and you want to lift weights and get strong, that's somehow racist. And I've seen that stuff online. And I'm like, boy, there's certainly some race issues in our country that we need to address. But the problem when they start saying ridiculous things like that is the real concerns aren't getting addressed. So the decision I made was I'm just going to go all the way, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to quiet the noise. Whatever I'm seeing on social media or the news or whatever I'm trying to fill my mind with, I'm going to limit that negativity, and I'm just going to keep going and doing my best.
Yeah, I have had a similar experience, I'm 45. I've always just taken pretty good care of myself. I like working out.
Yeah.
Some people drink, some people smoke, some people drive race cars. They have their hobbies, they have
Yeah.
their calm their mind and,
Yeah.
work their demons out. For me, it's always been hiking, running, lifting weights, hot yoga. That takes
Nice.
me to that quiet place.
Yeah.
My business world. I have 3 kids, married just recently, but my life is so noisy on the outside, everywhere around me, and I'm so engaged with people daily for work that
Yeah.
I find those activities of solitude, of working on myself, whether that be my body or reading, like I said, listening to podcasts, those type of things, that's what builds me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes social media has had a lot to do with that, vilifying personal excellence and success. I mean, Jim, there's a lot of false prophets out there
Yeah.
on social media.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that they've done a disservice to people who have true good intentions, because they're a lot louder. They're a lot louder than Jim Moats.
They are, for sure. And that's where it gets frustrating. Um, I I want to do things from a place of humility,
Right.
and I want to be better in all areas, largely so I'm equipped to help the next person be better. This stuff isn't about us. Um, it's about, let's be our best for our families and set an example for the younger people that are coming up behind us. And to this is another line from the New Testament. Paul said that he wants to live a life worthy of being imitated, and that's what he was striving to do. Is he knew that who he was, and he was the baddest of bad guys, and he had an encounter with Christ, and then he went on to write most of the New Testament, and he said, I want to live a life worthy of imitation, and the only way that's possible is for Christ to live in and through me. That's kind of the idea of this whole thing. We just want to be examples for the next group of people. And
That's really interesting that you would bring that up. My mom is 73 years old. She's 74. My mom is the fittest great grandma you've ever seen.
love
She
it.
goes to water park. Jim, my mom goes to water parks, 73 years old, and still goes down slides with
Nice.
her grandkids and great grandkids. And my whole life, my mom has always been so active and healthy, right? And taking care of herself, and not out of vanity,
Yeah.
She was a working mom, but that was her outlet. But it also became kind of a pillar of our family because my mom demonstrated healthy habits,
Yes.
right? And she instilled in me that that was important to take care of.
Yeah.
But it's so cool because I took my great nephews, they're 2 and 6 months, to the zoo last weekend, and I'm pushing my double stroller, and I have two of my kids and my daughter's boyfriend, and we're all laughing, and I'm looking around and I see these people that are so out of shape
Yeah.
and miserable. And there's parts of the zoo that if it's clear up on top of the hill, it's
Yeah.
pretty much empty because people don't want to
They
walk.
can't get up there. Yeah.
Yes, it breaks my heart because that doesn't make them happy.
Right.
Um, and there's a lot of people that just settle for that.
Yeah.
They don't know how to break out of that, or they're ashamed. They don't know where to start, or they've
Yeah.
never, like you said, they've never been shown that
Never
example.
been shown. Yeah.
And their kids, they're setting this terrible example for their children. You and David Chatham talked about that. These
Yeah.
kids don't have an
Yeah.
example to live by. And I
Yeah.
think that's really important. My mom set that for me.
That's a
And
great example. That's a good testimony. Good on her. The thing for physical fitness for me and building strength is, to me, it's the bridge between existing and living life. So there's so many people existing and they're on this medication and this medication, and then this medication makes me tired. So I need to take another one to give me some energy. Then the energy one makes it tough to sleep. So I need something to put me to sleep. And in the morning, I'm groggy. And so I need to get something to make me less groggy. And then I'll have my blood sugar and this and that. And you're so medicated. And I think people are, to go a little conspiratorial, and maybe it's not even, to me, it's fact, but big pharma and big food are pumping so many billions of dollars in lobbies in this country and have politicians in their pockets that decisions are getting made in our government on both sides of the aisle that are to the detriment of the citizenry. And we need to be able to recognize that just because that somebody's going to get on TV that weighs 400 pounds with a suit on with a title and tell you that Lucky Charms is better than sausage and bacon, that doesn't make it so. And we need to educate ourselves, and that's part of what we need to do. We lead by example, and we try to get some truths out there. But I don't want to just exist. And I made the decision, I'm not living that life. I want to be alert and sober, and I want to be fit, and I want to be healthy, and I want to know what it is to live life and write the script of my life. I'm not going to have it dictated by poor decisions, poor health, or somebody that's got a little more money in their bank account than me. And that's what I want to encourage other people to do, because that, as it's part of the show title, to me, that's where freedom comes. There's no freedom when you can't get up a hill.
there is absolutely no freedom when your life is dictated by medications, physical limitations that are self-imposed that
Yeah.
you could do something about.
Yeah.
And there are so many people, Jim, it makes people easily controlled.
Yeah, it
Easily
does.
controlled.
And that's the big picture from the government perspective, isn't it? So when
Yeah.
you're a sheep, that's what they're after. That we're going to give you health in a pill, which isn't health at all. We're going to provide you a minimum income so you don't have to strive to be anything better. We're going to tell you how to live, where to live. We're going to take half of what you do earn, and we're going to ship it off to foreign lands so it can be laundered back into our pockets. And the whole thing is just, it's a cycle that I just can't watch anymore. And so no one's coming to save us. We're responsible for our land. We need to farm our own land, so to speak. We need to handle our own families and our own business. And we need to encourage other people to do the same and try to do our best to set the example and provide the tools. That's the reason for the show. That's the reason for the book and everything that I'm trying to do. And you are doing it in your sphere of influence.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go.
When did you notice this sharp decline in personal responsibility for oneself and one's own family? Because when I was young growing up, that was my dad, my mom. It was We struggled. They struggled. My dad was in the car business when I was very young. He went out as an entrepreneur, inventor, struggled years. But there was never that, well, we could put the kids on free lunch, or we could, that wasn't even a thought, Jim.
Yeah.
That was so far beyond the scope of thinking in my family.
Yeah, same. So to answer your question, to me, it was I don't have the exact time frame, but I'm going to tell you it seems to be about 20 years to me. Um, Society really started taking a shift to where it was glorified in a lot of popular culture to go on assistance, so to speak, and to encourage young women to have multiple children because the government is going to give you a raise every time you do, and we're going to take care of you. And that did a couple things for the government. First off, what they thought it would do would ensure the Democrats would always have these people as voters because they knew that's who was buttering their bread. And I think that was a pretty sound strategy and still continues to be. The other thing that it did was it broke up the family unit, and it made it socially okay for men to not take responsibility for their children.
Right.
So whether or not you want to stay in the home, that's a whole nother argument. But these young men are out there impregnating woman after woman after woman with no means of verifiable income. So they're not paying any kind of child support. The women don't want to get married because they see it as a pay cut. Why would I give up $3,000 a month in support from the government to marry this guy who I'm not really in love with, who's the father of two of my kids, and he's making $1,000 a month? That math doesn't make sense to a lot of these folks. So the family they wanted to disintegrate the family unit,
It
and
was manipulated.
they have succeeded. And when you start, no matter which side of the aisle you fall on, I lean more conservative, and I'm more of a family values type of person, but I see the strategies that have been implemented from all the way going back to you can't pray in school anymore, you can't say the Pledge of Allegiance. The indoctrination started a couple of decades ago, and it's really ramped up since COVID. COVID to me was the big power grab test, and it really drew some lines in the sand
Yeah.
as to how far the government can go. And it turns out they can go a lot farther than I ever thought. But it has been demonized and it's been incentivized. And this takes us to, I'll even bring up the topic of abortion. So I'm a pro-life person, but I also understand there's instances that we should have a conversation about, of instances of incest and rape and things of this nature. And these are real conversations that need to be had. What I'm staunchly against, and I will not waver, is I can't stand by any further and watch abortion being used as birth control. And that's what's going on. And to have a conversation outside of that, there again comes, we're going to cancel you. You're a demon. You're this and that. And it just makes no sense that we can't have open dialogue about these things. You can't be killing babies just because you don't feel like having one. And you need to take responsibility for your actions.
Well, I think you hit the key point there. Open dialogue, even when it comes to the breakdown of the family structure. I was have my daughter, married to my ex-husband. We had 2 more kids, got divorced. I was a single mom. The thought of, hey, now I can, and I had started my company. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many people said, well, you can get your kids on Hawkeye insurance. I was like, what is that?
Yep.
What's sting? I was like, well, no,
Yep.
I can work. I work. I pay our health insurance, But I was raised with those values. That was instilled in me. So that wasn't in my core. But the amount of people that saw nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And in their core of who they were, it was, well, it's available. You would not believe how many people in the construction industry you would be amazed how many men I know who have their children on Hawkeye insurance because their wife stays at home and they like their non-taxable income, right? They want to do cash jobs.
Yep.
And I think, but they want to pretend that they're providing for their family. No, you're not.
Yep.
You're living off the government.
That's
I
exactly
raised
right.
3 kids. You
Yep.
know, I was a single mom for 13 years. And I'll be damned if I wanted the government in my house
Yeah.
dictating anything. And that is the problem, is once they are in your house, they have your children on any sort of programs. They're in your house.
Yeah.
They're dictating your choices and they're steering your thoughts and where and what you're doing. I didn't want that.
It's pure manipulation tactics, and it takes very strong character and integrity to not give into that, because I can understand that it seems attractive to a lot of people. And you're one of the special ones.
Jim, take a step back though. This is what rubs me all the wrong way. I have friends who have special needs children who truly need access to additional services.
That's what it's for.
I know parents who one has gotten cancer and they were the breadwinner and it has just decimated their families financially. Those people, they are the ones that need and require our help and our attention. They're not out there to leech off anyone.
Absolutely.
They're not out there to take advantage. And I feel like we have taken away from the people who truly need it by giving it to people who are just lazy.
Totally agree. Well said. Thank you for bringing that up. There is a big differentiator there.
Yeah.
Some things need to be put in place. One of them needs to be no assistance without drug tests. I've believed in that for a long time. If you're going to show, let's say you're a single mom, you've got 3 kids and you're on assistance. Okay, great. You need to go when you pick up your money or whatever, however you're getting your direct deposit or whatever, you need to drop a urine sample. You need to be drug free. One of the other things that needs to happen is it has to be incentivized to work. So here's what I mean by that. I don't have all the answers. I'm no politician, but just to throw an idea out there. Let's say let's take you, for example. You were a single mom, you had 3 kids. Okay. You could have sat home and got a certain amount of check. Okay. So we want to incentivize, hey, it's in my character and integrity. I want to go work. Then let's put people to work that have been vetted working in daycares. So now the government should be able to pay those people to watch kids of people that want to go out and work. Now, when you go out and work and say you go out and you make $800 working for a week. All right. Now you're going to get a stipend as a percentage of that. So, hey, you made 800. Here's another 10% of that. So now you've made 880 because the government wants to say, we want to incentivize you to go to work because now you're paying into the tax base and all of a sudden the watermark comes up. There's different things that can be done within the framework of helping people that is incentivizing entrepreneurship and going to work.
I agree, but I think it goes deeper. I think it goes deeper into the character of the people. And I think that we have a lot of broken people. I think that we have a epidemic of people that don't know how to cultivate self-worth. They don't know how to cultivate personal responsibility. Jim, there's a lot of people out there that have just never, as you said about Paul, they've never seen anyone to imitate.
Yeah.
And that's a failure of parents. At the end of the day, it's a failure of parenting. And it's a failure as a society to hold people accountable for parenting. Whether you agree with that court case in Michigan or not, where the parents got charged when the young man committed the shooting in the school.
Shooting in the school, yeah.
You know what? It's about time that parents have to take responsible.
So I agree with that verdict because they ignored obvious signs. They were checked out as parents. They encouraged poor behavior. They did nothing to seek help that they themselves weren't able to provide. We don't
Right.
have all those tools as parents. We need to seek out help. They did nothing. They are complicit in the deaths in those deaths, and I think rightfully so. They're going to pay the penalty for that.
They wanted to be their children's buddy.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. Um, you know, my father was my hero, my best friend. He passed away in 2014. No, passed away in 2008. Sorry. February 14th, actually, is Valentine's Day. Um, he raised me a little bit that way. He and I were having beers when I was 15 years old, and it was really fun, and that was great. And he was my buddy, and I look back on that. I'm not disparaging how he parented me. He was the best guy I've ever known, but there were times that you need a little bit of, hey, you're 15 years old and drinking isn't, what you should be doing. Um,
Right.
and no judgment, but there's a fine line there. He also taught me work ethic. He and my mom both had full-time jobs when I was a young kid, and that was just enough to get by. So you're right. It's the example that's not being set, and we can complain all we want. Personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. We have to focus on, let's look at ourselves, and then we can build ourselves up into people that can set an example, provide the tools and the encouragement to help others come along. And that's how you build a tribe. Building tribes, building communities, people that have your back, people that, I want to say like-minded, but that doesn't mean they agree with you on everything. Like-minded on the big picture strategic things that are important. And taking care of your neighbor and not relying on the government to come and do something. When you see a need, try to fill it. And I see the pendulum slowly swinging back to that. And I'm going to do my part, and there's nothing else we can do. Let's do everything that we can.
I agree. Totally agree.
You want to talk about your business?
Well, sure.
I kind of do. First off, what's it called? What do you do? How'd you start it? When? And let's go, because this is exciting.
Well, so I have 3 companies. I have my first company that I started in 2008 is a construction company. We'll kind of back up. I grew up with I call it not a normal dad. I have 2 older brothers.
Okay.
My dad did not treat me much differently than he treated my brothers.
Okay.
When it was time to clean his shop, I had a broom or a shovel, just like my brothers. When he gave my brothers Army fatigues for Christmas from the Army surplus store, I got some too. We were raised to work hard, and I was not exempt from that because I was a little girl. I was right in there. Plus, I wanted to keep up with my 2 brothers. So I am so grateful for that now, because my dad didn't treat me any differently, but my dad was also kind of my first example of a man looking at women like, you can do anything your brothers can do. You're a girl, but get out here and try. I tell people my dad's favorite line and when I'm getting down and I'm like, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. My dad's famous line was, well, God damn it, Tamara, did you even try? Damn it, Tamara, did you even try? And I'm like, okay, Dad, I got to try. I got to try. So growing up with that was interesting, but it kind of opened my mind to possibilities. But I thought I was going to go to law school. And I loved research, always loved. I've always been an avid reader. Didn't particularly like school, but wasn't much of a challenge to me. Wound up at the Corps of Engineers as a student intern, and I was the first female student intern put into military construction contracting, thrown kind of to the wolves, and I loved it. It was everything that I liked. It was technical reading. It was digging into documents, federal acquisition regulation clauses. It was also, I got to go out to job sites where the actual construction was starting. And at that point, I really hadn't been around construction too much other than what, my dad and stuff did at our own house. But I just fell in love with it. It was that satisfaction of seeing something come up from the ground. And then when you see all the documents and the paperwork that come into it and the things that make up the contracts and the plans, just hit all my buttons, if you will. Left the Corps, didn't want to leave. I was forced out of my job there. And we can unpack that later when we talk about weak men. But I was kind of stung by the industry, if you will, that I loved it. It just appealed to me. So obviously didn't have my tuition reimbursement anymore. So I had to drop out of college. I needed a job still. And I wound up working for 2 large construction companies over the next 7 years in the Omaha market. Retail, restaurants, big box, churches, schools, commercial construction, not really anything residential. And I really liked it. And was an estimator and assistant project manager, but I kept hitting walls of, well, you'll be a distraction on job sites if you're a project manager. Well, you're a mom, so you don't want that responsibility because, we leave that to the guys so you can leave the office at 5 and go home to your kids. And it just was frustrating. But the upside of that was, Jim, I tell people my career was built up with crusty old white men. And those crusty old white men were some of the greatest guys in the world.
Yeah.
I hate that all men get lumped in together because I have had the pleasure of working in a career for over almost 25 years now with primarily men. And there's some really good men out there. And there's some really strong, good mentors out there. And my company, my career, it was built a lot of it because of them. They took me under their wings. Once they figured I was there to learn, they were like, well, come here, kid. Come here. Let me show you how to work the digitizer and do a dirt takeoff. Here, I'll show you how to do this. Come here, come out on the job site. I'm going to tell you why we do this. Like I can remember when we were doing our first tilt-up concrete building and I had never seen it. And this mean old superintendent, everybody just hated. I started asking him questions when he was in the office one day, and he's like, well, just come out to the job trailer tomorrow, I'll take you, I'll kind of explain it to you and show you. I had a lot of guys like that, the old crusty white guys, as I say. Yeah. But they were great to me, and I fell in love with the industry. I wanted to go further. I kept running into issues in the office, trying to get promoted. So finally I was like, I had all this government background for government contracts, small business. And I thought, I'm just going to leap. And I did it on January 31st, 2008. Pretty much, I think if you look at the stock market, that might have been the lowest day.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss, Jim. Ignorance is bliss. I was 2 kids pregnant with me, had no clue really what was going on in the real world, right?
Yeah.
And I just dove, and somehow I made it.
Awesome.
It was great. It was great. And boy, I think back and I'm like, wow, I must have been nuts, right? Who starts a construction company in the Great Recession?
Yep.
As a single mom? Just like, doesn't make sense.
That. Yes.
But it's I geared my company right from the beginning. I decided I wanted to attack government contracts. It was what I knew really well, and it was highly specialized, kind of a niche opportunity. So I have been woman-owned, hub zone, graduated from the 8A program, which is kind of like the top echelon of the government programs. Seen the good, bad, and the ugly of the government from the inside. Watched even the government itself in their programs over the last 10 years have just gotten worse and worse. And it's disheartening. It's disheartening. So I'm at a point in my career. I started a development company in 2015 to develop my own projects. I've done a couple of those. I have a project currently in Hamburg, Iowa for an affordable housing subdivision that we're working on. And then in 2016, I launched H2W Apparel. I had been teaching hot yoga for years. I'd been a yoga instructor for years and worked out, hated sports bras. And, in those moments where you're about to lose everything and you think that your business is going to implode, your brain does weird things. And
it does.
I don't give up. My husband says I don't know when to quit, which can be a blessing and a curse. But I was sitting on the floor of an airport in tears in Washington, D.C., thinking that I was losing everything. And I just started, what am I going to do? If I can't be in construction, what am I going to do? What do I know? Anything.
And who are you?
Yeah.
Apart from that, which is something else that we don't understand how much our identity gets wrapped up into that.
Right. So I started sketching out, if I could, I want a new sports bra. I want to make a new sports bra. And I sketched it out on a piece of paper and I came home and I started like Frankenstein, and I don't sew. I can't even sew a button. So I hot glued a bunch of things together and I had it in my office. And about a week later, my IT guy of all people was in there. And I did not know that his family was in the apparel industry.
Oh.
And he's like, what is that? And I said, he's like, that's kind of cool. He goes, would you want to make a prototype of that? And I go, okay, I don't know how to do that. And he goes, oh, I know the people. And Jim, within 6 months, I had 4,000 units of my bra delivered and started H2W Apparel. And I have a U.S. patent. I have a utility patent for my bra. So I am an inventor, according to the government. But I didn't lose everything in my construction company. Stayed in construction, kind of put that on the back burner. But crazy enough, my favorite story from my apparel company is I called Shields, right? Because you're trying to get your wares out there into circulation and distribution. And so everybody's like, we have to put it in stores and this and that. And I have it in some boutiques and some a lingerie store in Omaha and whatnot, some of the yoga studios. And I called Shields corporate because I didn't know that I shouldn't or couldn't.
Yeah, right.
I just, I'm good at research. I found the number for the buyer for women's wear.
Yep.
And I sent her an email and sent her samples. And I still have the voicemail on my phone from 2017 that she left me. She told me no, of course, right? But she said, I really appreciate that you went to all this trouble to go through these steps. This is a really cool product. Unfortunately, we only carry lines that have more than 5 items in there. You've got to have all. And I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I've saved that voicemail for 7 years, and I'll probably always keep it because it reminds me that it just doesn't hurt to try. I got a no, but it was like the greatest no. Who gets a no? Who gets to even talk to Shields corporate and get told no and take that leap?
Yeah, that's what a good perspective. So stacking up no's is something that I am a big proponent of. So a lot of times in sales, we're taught, just keep trying and you got to get the yes and you got to get the yes. And I used to train my team I don't want us to focus on the yeses. I want you to go out there and try to accumulate as many no's as you possibly can. And in the
Absolutely.
process of accumulating no's, guess what you trip into? Well, you trip into a lot of yeses, and you're out there focusing on getting reps as well. So that's the no's are the things that can help us grow the most. I love that you have that perspective. And
The
that's inspiring.
Jim, the no's and the failures, man, that's where you learn.
Yeah.
That is where you learn. I mean, that buyer, that head women's apparel buyer for Shields, what she taught me, I had to really sit down and think about it, because she said, if you decide to launch more products, please reach out to me. And
Yeah.
I sat back, and at that time, a construction company had turned around, things were looking up, and I was like, this was like a hobby, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I'm not really passionate about it. I like inventing things. I like seeing things come together. But do I want to be in the apparel industry? No.
Yeah.
But I learned something through that, and I totally agree with you. And I think too many times, that comes back to, well, did you even try? Yeah, I tried, and I
Yeah.
hit a no, but I got a no, but,
Yeah.
or a no, and here's some feedback.
Yeah.
And too many people are so scared of that word no,
Yeah.
they won't even try. And
Yeah.
that is just,
Yeah.
when you talk excellence or moving the needle of anything in your life, if you're afraid to fail, or if you're afraid to go for a hike and have to stop after a quarter mile because, man, you're just tired,
Yeah.
and start again the next day, you're never going to start.
That's right. You're 100% right. And people are afraid of the no's so much. I was having this talk the other day that one of the things that I think is missing from young men today is they're so afraid of the no. And that's so contrary to how I came up and how I was raised. I used to spend a lot of time in bars, my former life. And when I would walk into a bar, my whole thing was, I'm going to find the most beautiful woman in this bar, and I'm going to go up and get my no. Right?
Get it out of the way.
Yeah. Hi, I saw you from over there. I'm not trying to be a creep or anything, but you're really pretty, and I'm not a weirdo, but I'd love to buy you a drink, sit down and have a talk. And you know what happens? You get a lot of no's. But guess what? You get better at it. You get better at talking to people. You build your confidence, and you get a few yeses. Then now you're the guy that just goes in and talks to the prettiest girl in the bar. And young men are missing that confidence. They're so afraid of women. And so, since they're so afraid of women, they treat them like shit
Oh, yes.
because they're afraid of them. When you're not afraid of women and you understand that they're to be cherished and honored, and they're different than you, like women are different than me, I get that. You treat them with respect and reverence, and you understand that these are valuable people, and they are at least as capable as a man in every freaking thing, and you treat them entirely different. When you're afraid of them, you treat them poorly.
We have misconstrued the word, I think, strong man and weak man, or that term toxic masculinity gets
Tough.
thrown
Yeah.
around. And this is something that was one of the first questions I think I sent to you, because I don't know if it was the Chatham episode or what I was listening to, but you touched on that briefly. And hold on, Jim, I have somebody delivering. Okay.
Real life happens while we record these things.
Yeah.
I've got cats screaming at me because I got them shut out of my office. Hopefully
Sorry.
it doesn't come across the feed.
Yeah. Okay. So back to, that toxic masculinity, that strong man, that weak man.
Yeah.
We have categorized these things so polarizing, right?
Yeah.
But we've also assigned an image to that.
Yeah.
That in my, when a strong man and a masculine man, I think about like Lieutenant Colonel Zanders that I met in the construction industry. LTZ, I called him. Man, he was a force, and he just was a powerhouse. He could command a room. He was a project manager. He was retired from the Army.
Yeah.
But he was tough. He was tough on me. He was tough on the guys. He was tough across the board, Jim. He was tough on himself. But he was a strong man. He was a strong leader. And I really respected that out of him. He taught me a lot. Today, if LTZ walked into a room like he did 20 years ago, oh boy,
Yeah.
he probably would get fired.
Yeah.
And that's sad to me. And he would get fired because the men in the room,
Yeah. They couldn't take it.
they couldn't take him coming
Yeah.
in and slapping down a set of prints and saying, who did this?
Yeah.
And why did you do this?
Yeah.
And I want you to go back and redo this, because it's not,
Yeah.
they couldn't take that strong
Yeah.
feedback and criticism.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, I think. When I think of a weak man and instances I've ran into weak men are the men that beat women. Weak men are the ones that scream at women, whether it be their wives, their daughters, their co-workers. Weak men are the men who send the sexually graphic pictures to women unsolicited. Weak men are the men who prey and who are predators. They prey on young girls that, when I think of these men that are trolling these high school girls and stuff, that's a weak man. A strong man? A strong man doesn't do those things, Jim. A strong man is strong in character, spirit, and in who he wants to be in the future.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that all kind of got wrapped up into toxic masculinity, right?
Yeah.
And I have really struggled with this. So I can only imagine the men in this country that have struggled with this.
Yeah. The key to the whole deal is understanding what a man's role is that stand the test of time, that's independent of the swaying of society, independent of the woke progressive views. And to me, those things are authentic manhood consists of, I call it 4 elements. And I've been taught this for years, going back to my men's ministry when I started going to at the church. So we need to reject passivity, because passivity is a big problem with men. They just sit on the couch with the remote control and let life happen. So we need to reject passivity. We need to accept responsibility. So I love Jocko's books, but especially Extreme Ownership, where he speaks of, it's your fault. Well, I didn't do that. It doesn't matter. You accept responsibility. You lead courageously. That means you're going to feel fear. As a man, I feel fear. However, courage means I'm going anywhere. And the last part is there's an element of manhood that should expect the greater reward of God. Understanding that we might not get the immediate fruit of the discipline and the things that we need to do, but God's greater reward is coming for us. So those are the 4 tenets of authentic manhood. And then the other thing, when someone would say, well, what's a real man? Because in church settings and men's groups, you get asked that stuff a lot. You better have some kind of an answer. Oh, man's just, you got to have something concrete. And I believe these things. I also think the man's role in life is to direct, protect, and provide for the family. That doesn't mean the woman has to stay home and not provide. Doesn't mean the woman can't make more money. But a man should direct, protect, and provide. And I am not such a staunch traditionalist to where, the man decides everything and the woman has the dress and the apron on and in the kitchen. And I'm not that guy. But men need to be protectors. And if you are 130 pounds and you have no testosterone and you only eat tofu and you don't train and you have no means of protecting yourself, how can you protect a family? How can you be the one that's going to run into the gunfire if there's a situation at the grocery store? I think that's a role of a man. And is there something in what I've just said that some could deem sexist or misogynistic? Probably, but that's not my heart, and that's not where it comes from. And I think that a strong man, I think a woman can only be truly respected, admired, and loved and desired by a man who is confident in his masculine strength.
I would 100% agree with that. In my personal family situation, people would say I am the breadwinner. I've been an entrepreneur for almost, 20 years.
Yeah.
My husband is a truck driver. He loves it.
Yeah.
And if you were to put my first husband, who what I would say was not a man, not a strong man, next to my current husband, which I know is probably unfair to do, but the differences would be very obvious very quickly.
Yeah.
My husband is the protector. He is we joke that I get to say whatever I want and do whatever I want because I have him right here.
Nice. There
And
you go.
no, he's just. But it wasn't until I met him, and honestly, until he figured himself out too. He
Yeah.
had some issues, and I told him a couple years ago, I need you to be a man, and I need you to fulfill this role in my life, because if you don't bring anything to the table for a woman like me.
Yeah.
And I think what gets confused with, especially, you have a lot of women in the professions right now. You have a lot of women. You have more female graduates from college than ever.
Yeah.
I think what women and men have gotten confused is that, and Jim, there's been times in my life, in my career, where I have flowed too much over into that masculine. And it doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve me well when I'm operating in that capacity.
I understand.
Do I get things done? Yeah. But it's hard. It's really hard to operate in that energy.
Yeah.
When I'm supported by and my husband is that very strong masculine role for me, it allows me to be that more feminine woman. Does that mean that I'm not an entrepreneur and that I'm not a, general contractor and developer? No, not at all. Not at all. It just means that I have that other pillar over here in my life who takes on that protector role,
Yeah.
When I was a single mom, I was everything. And I had more of that masculine energy because in my house with my children, I was the protector, I was the mother, I was the money maker,
Yep.
everything. I was the provider. So that's hard as a woman, though, when you've filled all those roles. And this was my own challenge when I got with my husband 4 years ago, was being able to release and kind of give him that space, right?
Yeah.
And that's been a learning curve in our marriage but now I'd say in the last year, man, I really like it. It's allowed me a place to grow that I never thought I could grow. I can really foster more of that mom role, right? That more female energy that I really want to bring to the table. It's made me also kind of question where I'm at with my businesses and stuff, because I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting that very masculine fight in my business. But does that mean that? No, absolutely not. But men have a tough job right now. This chatter from the far left, the far right, it serves no one trying to solve those problems. And like you said at the very beginning, the problem is we can't even have conversations.
There you go.
About things like this.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk to you about having conversations. So I don't want to get into all the specifics of what this gentleman spoke on, but I wanted to get your overviewing opinion. Harrison Butker,
Mhm.
kicker for the Chiefs. I don't know
Sure.
if you know this or not, but I am obsessed with the NFL to a point where it's ridiculous, and the countless hours I waste every single day, even in the off season, focusing on this nonsense is embarrassing. But I'm a big Chiefs fan. Have been my whole life. Went to the Super Bowl when they won the first one a few years ago. So I'm a big Chiefs guy, and I like this kicker, Harrison Butker, 28-year-old dude, Christian dude, devout Catholic. So he goes to a Catholic school in Missouri,
Mhm.
college, gives a commencement address, and he talks about a lot of Catholic things to a Catholic audience at a Catholic university. And some things are controversial, quote unquote, that he said. And I have got the whole speech here. So I parsed it, I've read it, I've highlighted it, but that's for another time. Why does one side have to say he's a scumbag? He should be kicked off the Chiefs. He shouldn't be allowed to earn money anymore. Here's his address. Go to his home in Kansas City and protest outside of his house, harass his family and his kids. And then the other side is everybody that doesn't agree 100% with what he said can't be a good Catholic. They're not real Christians. Why
Cancel.
can't it be, hey, you know what? I don't agree with some of the stuff he said, but you know what? He's an articulate guy. He's entitled to his opinion. He's not attacking anyone. He's a Catholic speaking Catholic doctrine at a Catholic university. That's a perfect venue for that. We don't need to punish this guy. And we used to be in a place in this country where conversations could be had. And something like Harrison Butker said, that commencement address could actually be the springboard to some real discussion and bringing people together and be a unifying event rather than further driving that wedge. I don't know how to fix this in this country. Do
You
you have any
know,
thoughts about that?
I yes, that's very interesting to me. This goes back to the social media. Where it started was you had people take, a 22-second clip out of his entire, 49-minute speech
Yeah,
or
it's a lot.
something
It's a
like
lot of
that.
pages.
They took a snippet. Jim, if somebody took the snippet from a conversation that you and I were having right now on this podcast, we could both be canceled in 10 seconds. If we took a snippet out of any one of our conversations that any one of us has on any given day,
Yeah.
you could be canceled for it. But also, like you said, why is it when we don't agree with someone else's views? Like you said, he's Catholic. I'm not Catholic. He's speaking at a Catholic university. He is obviously, he thought he knew his audience and who he was talking to.
Well, he got a standing ovation.
Yeah, I don't I don't know enough to judge him,
Yeah.
but also why can't we just have a conversation about the things that he said, but also why has this ultra feminist, I don't even, they're a disservice to what's going on right now, because why is it such a crime to honor a woman who might want to be a mother and stay home?
Agreed. That's the thing is there's the left, and I'll just use the left and right terms. The left, these feminists, these crazy feminists, these Nazi feminists that are out there, if you don't agree with everything they are about, you're their enemy.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that it should be, he actually lauded women who are out in the professional world. Go out there and make your career. He said, but I also would say you'll find that your family and your children will end up being what you're most proud of. And then he goes into talking about his wife and how she was able to forego, she made the decision to forego her professional career to be a stay at home mom, educate their children, and be a great support system to what he has going on, and
Sure.
how she doesn't regret any of that. He was actually moved to tears
Yeah, I saw
during
that.
the speech. And what gets me is He's on the same team as Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce just went back and got his degree from the University of Cincinnati last month. Okay, so good on him. In his mid-30s, he went and finished his degree. He was up on stage getting his diploma. As he got his diploma degree handed to him, he opens a beer and chugs it on stage in front of the chancellor of the school. And he's screaming. He's got a beer in his hand. And everybody on social media said, that's what a real man is. But Harrison Butker, who's moved to tears talking about how much he adores his wife and the decisions that she's made and talking about traditional Catholic values, he's a guy that should be kicked off the team. We are like in bizarro world here. Why is Travis Kelce the image of a real man and Harrison Butker is a demon? I can tell you this. I know who I'd rather spend time with.
Totally.
It's just astounding to me. Now, I do want to say this for the audience, though. I have a good friend who is a devout Catholic whose daughter graduated from that school where Harrison Butker spoke.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to come on the show. I hope to have him on a week from the Tuesday that your show airs. And we're going to unpack the text of this and we're going to get his views on it because he knows the Catholic doctrine and things, whereas I don't. I'm not a Catholic guy. I'm a follower of Christ. There's a difference there. I don't know all their doctrine. We're going to unpack this stuff, and I hope it's going to be an interesting episode because I think his perspectives are going to serve super valuable, and I'm excited to do it.
You know, just kind of expand a little bit, Jim, on why is it as a society we are lauding Travis chugging a beer on stage at his graduation, or we are applauding women on Instagram and social media for posting almost naked pictures.
Yeah, so they're on Instagram showing their ass. Yeah.
Female empowerment.
Yeah.
When I see that and I see someone grab onto that term, female empowerment,
yeah,
it sickens me.
Yeah.
It sickens me. Do they honestly think women like Gloria Steinem were out there doing what they were doing for women's rights?
Yeah.
So that they could go on social media and give away their womanhood?
Exactly. That's such a great point. They just slap in the face those like Steinem who came before them and who did the hard work. And it's the same thing in the gay community. Gay rights has advanced so far in our nation. And all of this crazy transgender indoctrination of young kids and drag queen story hour and all this stuff has just blown up the progress that they've made. In fact, you know who can't stand all of that crap, who hates it the most? Gay people.
Amen.
Yeah, because you know what? They want to be like, you know what? I have attraction to other dudes and I want to go live this lifestyle and I just want to be treated as equal. Okay. I don't think that's a problem. On one of our first shows I talked about, as a Christian guy, I still don't have a problem with gay marriage. Okay. If you're in love with somebody and why can't you have the legal rights that come with a government married union? Now, is that a marriage you're going to get married by a pastor? And that's a whole nother conversation to have. You know, that's not for me to decide. I'm not judge and jury here. But when they take things too far, the progress that's been made has been blown up. And that's what we're seeing in society. For instance, I love that you shared this with me, and I have a note over here about it. Women's rights have come a long way.
Yeah.
And apparently not far enough in fairly recent history. So Sarah Blakey, I think I'm saying her name right.
Blakely.
Okay. So she founded Spanx.
Right.
She's a great entrepreneur. I like all of her stuff. She's married to a dude that I follow named Jesse Eisler. They're a great power couple. I just like everything they're about. So Sarah had something today that she posted that you had researched and fact checked. Women could not get a business loan without a male cosigner. And she asked, well, what year do you think that got changed? And I would have said mid 60s. Somebody answered, I don't know, 70, 71, that it was probably changed. Nope. The answer, 1988.
Right.
Until 1988, a woman couldn't go to a bank and get a business loan without a male cosigner. That's disgusting.
That, Jim, is still a trying to be a woman in a male dominated industry, especially for business loans. Good luck.
Yeah.
It is that there is still discrimination in lending. So we have a long way to go, right? There's a lot of things that are changing and they're for the better. But when she posted that, even I was like, 88? And I had to check because my mom had told me how in 1976, when she was pregnant with my brother, how she had to hide her pregnancy forever at work because she could be fired. I think it was 1977 when they finally passed the legal protections for women in the workplace so that they couldn't be fired or let go for being pregnant. And so my mom, she talks about that and how hiding their pregnancies, and they would try to, do whatever they could to not show as long as they could because she needed to work. And I'm like, wow. And then you look at, when could women open their first bank account? When could not even a business bank account, just bank accounts? There has been so many things that we have fought so hard for. And quite frankly, I haven't been out there busting my ass for 25 years in the construction industry so that women can jump on my coattails and post half naked pictures and call themselves boss babe. Yeah. It makes me want to throw up.
Yeah.
I don't
can imagine.
It's excuse me, I got to plug my computer in here. Jim, it's a slap in the face to every woman who's actually done it.
Yeah.
And worked hard alone and done the work. Yeah. Because that's just insulting. That's insulting. Yeah. And it's no more. I think you have I asked Jordan Peterson this question. I was at his event and my son, my 18-year-old son, I took him.
Perfect.
And we were at the VIP event, and I asked him the question, what do you see going on with young women? Because I think there is as much of an epidemic with young women in mental health as there is young men. And his response was, oh boy, is there. And he said, it's coming. It's behind the men a little bit, but it's coming. And he said, look no further than look at social media. Look at all. And it's, it goes back to what you said, that value of a woman. Marianne Williamson, are you familiar with her? She ran for president in 2020. She is a Christian faith leader.
Okay.
Marianne Williamson, look her up. They called her in the last election the crazy crystal lady. She really got pegged against a wall for her Christian beliefs. I sponsored an event. I've sat down with her personally, and she is just a powerhouse for women's rights and family. She's also a pastor. And she and I had this conversation about young women and how they've lost their way. And she said it will take strong men. Strong men are the ones that can help bring out the strong woman. And when we talk about this, we have this whole underlying weak male, I can't tell you how many men I know between the age of 18 to 35. They just don't work.
Yeah.
They don't do anything.
Yeah.
And they're okay with that. And their mothers are letting them live in their basements and making excuses for them. And it scares me. It scares me.
I agree with you. This is probably a little inappropriate, but I believe that you're not a man because you can pee standing up, and you're not a dad because you can ejaculate. It takes more to be a man and a father. and we need more men and fathers. Not to get sidetracked, but I just had a cat break through my door and is up on my desk now. So she might join the show.
All
Um,
right.
but
I've got 3 dogs.
oh, so you get it.
Yeah.
I just know this for the audience. I just want them to know I'm available. I don't have all the answers. I'm not perfect. I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm putting in the work. And if anyone wants to come alongside me, they want to be part of the tribe. They want to reach out. They want to send me a message or get together for coffee if they're local or whatever. I am passionate about helping men come alive and to start walking out authentic manhood. I don't care where a guy's been. I care where he's trying to go. And
Jim,
that's what I'm here for.
what's what do you think that women, and I know this is probably a strange question to ask you, but what do you think that women can do to support and encourage that strong male uh, character to come to be brought forth?
I think that women need to, first off, stop. I think too many women have given up on men. There's a stat I heard yesterday. 33%, so a full third of Gen Z women identify as LGBTQ. So we're talking about a third say they're gay now. Okay.
Wow.
So I think that in their minds, all that's out there are either crazed, abusive, drunken weirdos or these betas who have no interest in them anyway. So may as well go for women. I mean, that could be my only logic here. I think that women need to embrace and encourage and date men who they see are exhibiting traits of authentic manhood and not demonize them. If they see a man who might not want to go and get drunk 4 nights a week with them, they should be okay with that. They should stop having one night stands at the bar and getting on the apps and swiping to the left and hook and having random hookups and thinking that that's fulfilling them. And they should possibly embrace the idea of, do I want to have a family? Think for themselves. What kind of man would I like to father my child? Maybe we should start dating with the intent of a strategic future rather than dating the Chads of the world who want nothing more than to bed you down and never talk to you again. Maybe we should stop celebrating the Travis Kelce's of the world while we're calling the Harrison Butkers of the world a bigot. And women need to understand that they have a lot of power, and that any encouragement that a woman gives a man that she sees who is trying, who isn't maybe quite there, any encouragement a woman can give that man will go way further than that woman thinks in that man's heart and head. And he's encouraged to continue to build himself into the man that he's destined to be. And then
I
I think finally, women should stop over sexualizing themselves and understand that sometimes leaving a little bit to the imagination is probably more attractive than throwing it all out there on the internet and for everybody to know your dirty laundry.
I agree with most everything you said. I truly believe that probably my next season is coach working with women and trying to figure this problem out, because man, I see a lot of them struggling. I've struggled. And when I say I've seen them struggle, Jim, I know the struggle I have had, right? But I was raised by a strong mother who had that very, my mom was a strong woman. She was confident. She was beautiful. She didn't know it, but she had my mom had self-respect and dignity, and she
Yeah.
carried herself in a way that you knew she was the woman of the house, right?
Yeah.
My dad, to this day, they've been married 55 years. You
Oh,
mess with my mom, you
yeah,
look
it's
at my
over.
mom wrong, you're gonna
Yeah.
die,
Yeah, it's
right?
over.
Even
Yeah.
us kids, like you didn't talk back to your mom, but
Yeah.
that was something to be revered. And I'm not saying that you have to be married or whatnot, but these women today, but Jim, that's society that's done that to them too, right? We
Yes.
told these girls, oh, you need to be this, you need to be that, you need to be this, and all of these things. And they're seeing this on social media. It's playing out. And it's just, I can't imagine how hard it is to be a young woman
Yeah.
today and trying to figure these things out. And I feel like they're just grasping, that drowning person.
Yeah.
They grab and they grab.
Yeah.
Um, and and I feel like we just need some. It's like we got to wrap our arms around them and say, "Hey, come on, let's."
I want to say this too. I'm not one of those people that just doesn't want to give any practical advice and just say, you just need God.
No,
But there is a place in all of this, in this conversation, where in the middle of the nuance here, a life with Jesus Christ tends to lend itself more to caring less about what society tells you need to be, because that's an identity issue. Men and women alike are struggling with their identity. And do I find it online? Do I find it with taking my, showing my butt on Instagram? Do I find it by chugging a beer on stage? When we can find our identities in who Jesus says we are, we have the confidence to walk out our true selves, independent of what society's telling us we need to be. So I believe that a return to the values that are taught in the Bible and understanding the love, grace, mercy, and forgiveness of Christ, being able to receive that into our hearts so we can extend it to those in our lives, and understanding where our true identity lies, I think that's the starting place and the foundation for getting this thing back on track.
Jim, I would encourage you that any of the women in your life and any of your female listeners, when I was struggling, when I was 22 years old, leaving the Corps, just lost and heartbroken, our scripture that we started with,
Yeah, yeah.
I stumbled upon Marianne Williamson's book, A Woman's Worth. And it was complete opposite of what I would typically pick up, right? But
Yeah.
I was in the bookstore and I grabbed it and I opened it. And it was all about that return to God.
I love it.
Return as a woman to the image you were created in, and gather your strength. And that is what will sustain you through the hard times. And it was so cool because 20 years later, here I was hosting an event for her when she was running for president, sitting down, and she signed my original book. And I told her that story. And I'm like, you saved my life.
It's amazing.
You saved my life. And at the times of my life where I have found myself struggling, I sit here right now, I have my, devotional on my desk that I keep it. And I find myself the last couple of months struggling, and I turn to that. Yeah. And it does help. It does help.
It does. And I'll plug my book again. As I've read my book, different sections of it recently, at times I'm reading it, I'm like, this can help people. There's parts of this where I'm like, oh man, that's a little cringy that I shared that thing from my past or whatever. But then there's parts of it I'm like, this is a book that if I can get it in people's hands, has the potential to help them change the trajectory of their lives.
What made you when did you say, I need to write a book?
So it's been on my, someday I'm going to write a book type of a thing for a number of years. And I used to do it a little bit jokingly, like, oh, even when I was living like a, not the right life, I'd be like, oh, that could go in the book someday. Ha ha ha. But certainly over the last few years, because I love to read and books have been so influential for me. I just thought that I have I've been so many different things in life, from, fat to fit and poor to rich and everywhere in between and, kind of a heathen and, Christian. And I believe that my testimony and some practical things I've learned and implemented along the way have the potential to help other people. So last December, I sat down and I just decided to. I've been in prayer about, God, give me some guidance to, what would the structure of it look like? And I had a lot of these kind of downloads coming into my mind and in my heart, and I started typing them out. And I'm not super computer savvy, so I'm trying to figure out, the word processing aspect of it and all those things.
Right.
And the next thing you know, 6 or 7 months after I typed the first words, we're scheduled for a release of a book. So yeah, it's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to do a podcast someday. I wanted to write a book someday. And I decided that it's time to start living life and doing things that I really am passionate about and want to do. Things that have the potential to help other people. And so we'll see how it goes. It's been fun.
We started talking before you started recording about what you and I have both seen, like we said, in like the last 10 years, and this pendulum kind of going the other direction, maybe coming back more to center. We've had this far right, this far left.
Yeah.
These two. I feel like we have two screaming toddlers in the room yelling at each other,
Yeah.
and it's infiltrated every ounce of society. I mean, it's social, it's economic, it's political. It's just disgusting to me. And I am so looking forward to the day where people just are kind to one another again, and we can solve problems, and we can have conversations. Jim, I have a gay son. He's 15 years old. We have the best conversations. And like you said about the LGBTQ plus I, whatever, I've asked him, my husband and I will sit down and ask him questions. And he said, well, it's not enough anymore just to be a gay man, Mom. And I'm like, really? Because, we'll ask about the trans thing, or what is this, how do you feel about this? And I'm intrigued to learn from other people, but I can have those conversations in my house. And I wonder what stops other people from having those conversations.
Get back to where we're at. You can still hear me though, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you too. My recording thing says it's not recording though. My time thing isn't clicking up. So
it says,
what does it say now?
It says recording, but the timer is not going, and your screen is still frozen.
Yeah, yours as well.
That's strange.
Yeah, now I just kind of lost my whole screen.
I'm going to exit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So we're having some technical difficulties. I'm not showing up on the screen. I'm guessing my audio probably is still going. But the good news is we're getting pretty darn close to the end anyway. So we've been going about an hour and a half, and I apologize for the technical glitches. How can people get a hold of you?
People can email me at tbrunow@brunocontracting.com. They can find me on Instagram. I'm terrible at social media.
I can tell them what your Instagram is if you want.
Yeah, that would be great, because I don't even know what it is, Jim.
It is Tamara, Tamara _ and then the word fierce, FIERCEAF. I love that.
I think that was set up by my last marketing consultant.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and I will tell you, Fierce is the name of the 501c3 that I set up last year, because I am going to launch a female empowerment group. And I hate the word female empowerment. Fierce is Female Innovators, Entrepreneurs Redefining Coaching and Empowerment.
Oh, shoot.
And that's what the acronym Fierce is. And I wanted to do that because I felt like a lot of the groups for women were like social hours.
Yeah.
They didn't really dig into the weeds
Yeah.
and get down into how about remove the rocks. They didn't really work on that. Even in business, a lot of the women's business groups were focused on, heavily retail, multi-level marketing type things.
Yeah.
And I want to grab the women who really want to grow.
You want to hear something cool? And I love that, by the way. So what
Yeah.
I'm titling this episode, and I got this from what you had sent me this morning on Instagram. The episode is called Removing the Rocks with Tamara Brunow.
Well, that does kind of go into construction too,
Yeah,
doesn't
the whole
it?
thing, it just fits together, doesn't it?
That it does. That it does. I appreciate
Look,
that.
I want to have you back on because I want to go over some stuff that you and I have talked about too. It can even go into me leaving the car business and all that kind of stuff. But let's do this again. This has been really good. I appreciate you coming on. So I'm going to hit the end button and then we'll chat a minute. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jim.